The courtroom was eerily silent. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, casting a sterile glow across the marble floors. Elon Musk, the tech mogul who had transformed the future of electric cars, space exploration, and artificial intelligence, sat at the defense table, his hands gripping the edge in a tight, white-knuckled hold. His once confident posture was now hunched, a subtle sign of the pressure mounting on his shoulders. Judge Robert Matthews, a man with decades of experience in the courtroom, looked down at Musk with an expression that could only be described as disdain. The stern, no-nonsense judge was known for his sharp wit and even sharper tongue, but this was something else. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone in the room could feel it. This was no ordinary case. Elon's lawyers had worked tirelessly, for months to defend him, and the media had painted him as a misunderstood genius, someone whose passion for innovation often pushed boundaries. Yet today, in this moment, none of that mattered. The weight of his actions, his arrogance, his reckless disregard for the consequences was about to come crashing down. "Mr. Musk," Judge Matthews began, his voice cold and unwavering, "you've built empires, disrupted industries, and commanded the world's attention. But let's be clear, that doesn't excuse the chaos you've caused. You've made decisions that affect thousands, even millions of people. And today, we are here to reckon with that." Musk's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to maintain his composure. He had faced critics before. He had faced doubters, even enemies. But this felt different. The judge's words weren't just words. They were the beginning of something much larger, something that could change everything. The room was quiet as the judge continued, his gaze never leaving Elon. "You've pushed the envelope too far this time, Mr. Musk, and for that, there must be consequences." The words hung in the air, like a bomb about to detonate. Musk's mind raced. Was this the end? Was this the moment where everything came crumbling down? In the back of the courtroom, the reporters furiously typed on their keyboards, their eyes never leaving the scene. Unfolding in front of them, the cameras flashed, capturing every tenth second. This wasn't just a trial, it was a spectacle. The world was watching. Musk's fingers twitched as he reached for a glass of water, but his hand trembled, betraying the calm facade he was desperately trying to maintain. He knew what was at stake. His entire career, his empire, even his freedom, all of it was on the line. As the judge's words cut through the silence, Musk could feel the eyes of the world on him. The question echoed in his mind: what happens when you lose everything? And then Judge Matthews dropped the bombshell. "I am hereby ordering a full investigation into your business practices, your financial dealings, and your personal conduct. You are not above the law, Mr. Musk, and rest assured the consequences will be severe." The shockwave hit Musk like a punch to the gut. His stomach twisted, and for a brief moment, he could feel the weight of the entire world pressing down on him. This wasn't just a legal battle, this was personal. His life as he knew it was at a crossroads. The room erupted into whispers, the reporters exchanging stunned glances. Musk's lawyer stood up, his face pale, but Musk didn't hear anything. All he could hear was the pounding of his own heart. This was it. The moment when everything changed. As the judge banged his gavel, the noise faded, and for a split second, the world seemed to pause. Elon Musk, the visionary, the billionaire, was now on the precipice of losing everything. The cameras turned to him as if waiting for some grand response, some brilliant retort that would diffuse the situation. But Elon wasn't sure he had one left. He wasn't sure he knew how to get out of this. This was no longer a courtroom drama. This was the beginning of his greatest challenge yet. The world had seen him as a titan of industry, a man who could do no wrong. But now, in the eyes of the public, he was a man in crisis. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Musk's mind began to race. What did he do now? Would he fight back? Would he dig in his heels, defy the judge, and continue to pursue his ambitions at all costs? Or would he finally listen to those who had warned him that unchecked power and arrogance had their consequences? As the court recessed, Musk stood up slowly, his mind in turmoil. The journey ahead would be nothing like the one he had imagined. The courthouse steps felt like an endless stretch of stone, towering over him as Musk descended with his team. Each step echoed like the countdown to an inevitable showdown. The swarm of reporters was there, of course, as always, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in his face. The air was thick with questions, their voices clamoring to be the first to catch a glimpse of his reaction, to see how Elon Musk would handle his world unraveling. Mr. Musk, what will you do now? Do you plan to fight the judge's ruling? Do you feel the investigation is fair? The questions came rapid fire, but Elon kept his gaze fixed straight ahead, his eyes betraying little of the storm swirling inside him. He could feel the pressure mounting. The stakes were higher now than they had ever been. This wasn't just about his companies anymore. This was about his legacy. Behind him, his lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Sarah Matthews, no relation to the judge, was whispering urgently, trying to calm him down, offering strategies for the media circus and the battle ahead, Elon, she said in a low voice, her brow furrowed in concern. We need to talk strategy. We need to prepare for a long fight. This could take months, maybe even years. He didn't respond immediately, his thoughts racing. The thought of a drawn-out legal battle made his chest tighten. It wasn't just the pressure of public opinion. It was the idea of his very identity being scrutinized, laid bare for everyone to see. For years, he had been celebrated as a maverick, a hero to those who believed in innovation at all costs. But now, with the gavel dropped and the world watching, that image was crumbling fast. The media frenzy was reaching a boiling point. The press had already begun circulating stories that painted him in a less than flattering light. The headlines were harsh. Elon Musk, a genius or a fraud? Musk's empire faces legal storm. The untold truth behind Tesla's CEO. As he approached his car, a voice called out from the crowd. A reporter, braver than the others, made his way to the front, microphone in hand. Elon, do you think? This is the end for you? What's next for Tesla and SpaceX? Musk's lips parted, but no words came. What could he say? How could he explain a storm that was just beginning to build? The truth was he wasn't sure what the next step was, but he knew he couldn't afford to back down now. Not after all that he had built. The world was watching, and he couldn't let them see weakness. He climbed into the back of the car, the door shutting behind him with a quiet thud. Sarah took the seat beside him, flipping open her notebook. The tension in the car was palpable, and for the first time, Elon's mind wasn't racing with ideas. It was flooded with uncertainty. What do we do? He asked, his voice tight. Sarah exhaled, her eyes hardening. We fight. We fight the investigation, we appeal the judge's ruling, and we keep moving forward. We have to show the world we're not just going to roll over. Musk leaned back in his seat, his gaze focused. On the street outside, but his mind was elsewhere. A million scenarios played out in his head, each one with a different outcome. He was no stranger to adversity, but this felt like something bigger, something that threatened everything he had worked for, the very foundation of his empire. But at the same time, there was a voice in the back of his mind that refused to accept defeat. It was the same voice that had driven him to create Tesla and SpaceX, the same voice that had pushed him to make the impossible possible. And now, more than ever, he needed to listen to it. A few hours later, Elon sat in his office, the walls of the room lined with models of rockets, electric cars, and technological marvels that seemed to mock his current state. His phone buzzed on the desk, interrupting his thoughts. He glanced at the screen. An incoming call from one of his closest confidants, Jonathan Reed, a former NASA engineer and a key player in his SpaceX ventures. Elon, Jonathan's voice crackled through the line. I heard what happened. You're in deep this time. But listen, this isn't just about the judge. This is about your future. You need to figure out who's really behind this. It's not just the court. Someone wants you out of the game. Elon's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Jonathan hesitated for a moment, as though he wasn't sure how much to reveal. I've been hearing things. There are forces at play here. People who've been waiting for you to slip. Cup, this investigation? It's not random. It's a calculated move. Someone wants to bring you down. Elon was silent for a moment, digesting Jonathan's words. The idea that there was more at play here, that this wasn't just about a legal battle but something more sinister, didn't sit well with him. But he couldn't ignore it either. "Who would do something like that?" Elon finally asked, his voice low. Jonathan's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know yet, but you're going to have to dig deep. Watch your back, Elon." The line went dead, leaving Elon with a chill running down his spine. He had been in the game long enough to know that nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. If there were people trying to take him down, he needed to find out who and why. But right now he had to focus. The investigation was just the beginning, and Musk knew that the battle ahead was only going to get harder. The following days blurred into a haze of legal meetings, phone calls, and media coverage. Elon found himself holed up in his office more than ever before, barely seeing the light of day. He had become a man on the edge, consumed by a battle he hadn't seen coming, and now he felt the full weight of it pressing on him. The walls seemed to close in. The once grandiose vision of revolutionizing the world through innovation, now tangled in a web of suspicion and scandal. But despite the pressure, despite the growing media storm and the relentless barrage of questions from reporters, one thing kept Musk moving: the strange words Jonathan had left him with. "Someone wants you out of the game." Who could it be? He couldn't shake the thought. Musk had made plenty of enemies over the years, but this felt different. This wasn't just a standard corporate rivalry. This was personal. The idea that someone was pulling strings behind the scenes to bring him down haunted him. He spent the next few days digging into his company's operations, trying to piece together the puzzle. He had his team look into every angle: financial dealings, high-level meetings, even casual conversations that could have been misinterpreted. But nothing turned up. Late one evening, as he sifted through a stack of confidential documents in his office, a particular name caught his eye: Tom Renshaw. Renshaw was a former executive at Tesla, a man who had left the company under suspicious circumstances years ago. Elon had never given much thought to his departure. After all, it wasn't unusual for people to leave a company like Tesla. But now, with the judge's ruling hanging over him, that name felt like a clue, a potential piece of the puzzle that was slowly coming together. "Renshaw," Musk muttered to himself, scribbling the name down on a notepad. Was he involved in this? He could feel the wheels turning in his mind. If Renshaw had something to do with this, then he needed to get to the bottom of it fast. Musk wasn't going to let some shadowy figure take down everything he had worked. For the next morning, Elon arranged a meeting with his head of security, Alex Granger. "Alex," Elon said, his voice steady but urgent, "I need you to track down Tom Renshaw. I don't care where he's been or what he's been doing. I want to know everything about his movements over the last few months. I think he's involved in this investigation. I can feel it." Alex's eyes narrowed as he processed Elon's request. "You think Renshaw's behind this?" "I don't know yet," Elon replied, "but I have a bad feeling. He's been out of the picture for years, and now his name pops up. That's no coincidence." Alex nodded. "I'll get on it right away." As the days passed, Elon tried to push the growing sense of unease out of his mind, but it lingered. Every phone call, every email felt like a potential threat. The walls felt like they were closing in on him faster than he could control. Meanwhile, the media storm continued to intensify. The stories about the investigation were everywhere. Headlines screamed of a scandal in the making, and everyone wanted a piece of the drama. Musk's own social media accounts had become battlegrounds, with some of his supporters rallying behind him, while others began to question his integrity. But it wasn't just the press that Musk had to worry about. The investigation itself was spiraling out of control. Every day, new revelations came to light: accusations of financial mismanagement, insider trading, and even allegations of employee mistreatment. They were just rumors, but they were starting to stick. It felt like he was drowning in a sea of accusations, all of them threatening to pull him under. And then, 2 weeks after his conversation with Jonathan, Alex called him into his office. "Elon, I've found something." "It's about Renshaw." Elon's pulse quickened. "What is it?" "He's been working with a firm, Glenstone Partners. They've been consulting on several high-profile cases. A couple of them are tied to some major financial backers who have a long history of opposing you. and we've traced back some financial movements from a shell company that has direct ties to Glenstone. The timing is troubling." Elon sat down, his mind reeling. Renshaw, a man he hadn't thought about in years, was now at the center of something that could destroy everything he had built. Musk had always known that in his line of work, enemies were inevitable. But this was something he had never expected. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but the picture they created was far darker than he had imagined. He ran his hands through his hair, frustration and anger bubbling up inside him. How could they be doing this? "I need to meet with Renshaw," Musk said, his voice sharp. "Track him down. I want to confront him face to face. He won't get away with this." Alex gave a curt nod. "I'll make the arrangements." The next day, Elon found himself in a discreet meeting room, the door shut behind him with a soft click. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he waited. The air felt thick with anticipation. The door opened, and in walked Tom Renshaw. The man hadn't changed much since Musk had last seen him, still tall with a sharp suit and an even sharper gaze, but now that confident smile was replaced by something colder. There was a tension in his step, a guardedness that Elon hadn't noticed before. Renshaw took a seat across from Musk without a word. The silence stretched for several seconds, heavy and thick. Elon was the first to break it. "I know what you've been doing, Tom. The shell companies, the financial ties to Glenstone Partners. You think you can pull the strings from the shadows, but you're not getting away with it." Renshaw's eyes narrowed, but his face remained unreadable. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Elon. You think you're being clever, digging around for answers, but you're only going to make things worse for yourself. Why?" Musk's voice was sharp, demanding. "Why do this to me? To everything I've built?" Renshaw leaned forward, a slight smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Because, Elon, you've become a liability. Your recklessness has caught up with you. The world doesn't need another genius playing God. The truth is, it's time for someone else to take the reins, and you're just in the way." Elon's fists clenched under the table, the blood rushing to his ears. But he forced himself to stay calm. "You're wrong. I'll fight you. I'll fight this with everything I have." Renshaw's gaze was icy. "You're already losing, Elon, and you'll keep losing until you realize there's nothing left to fight for." As Renshaw stood and left the room, Elon felt a coldness settle in his chest. The man wasn't just a rogue executive from the Thou hast. He was a threat, a calculated enemy that was ready to do whatever it took to take down Musk. The war had just begun. The following weeks were a blur of late nights, tense meetings, and a mounting sense of urgency. Elon couldn't shake the cold feeling that had settled in after his confrontation with Renshaw. Despite his outward confidence, inside, he was shaken. This wasn't just a personal vendetta or a corporate rivalry. It felt like a meticulously orchestrated plot to take everything he had worked for. The legal battles continued to escalate. Every day brought new complications, and every hour seemed like a race against time. The media was relentless, broadcasting sensational headlines and raising more questions about his integrity and business practices. People were starting to doubt him. Even some of his closest allies seemed distant, unsure whether they should continue standing by him in the face of so many allegations. But it wasn't just the press or the legal system that Elon had to worry about. It was the quiet whispers behind closed doors. He knew Renshaw was still lurking in the shadows, pulling strings and manipulating events from a distance. Musk had always prided himself on being able to control his destiny, but now he felt like he was losing his grip. Determined to fight back, Elon turned to his most trusted allies, those who had been with him through thick and thin. He called an emergency meeting with Gwynne Shotwell, his longtime president at SpaceX, and J.B. Straubel, one of Tesla's co-founders. They were his rock, the people who understood the long, grueling road that had gotten them to this point. "Gwynne, J.B.," Elon said, sitting across from them at the sleek conference table, "we have a serious problem on our hands. Renshaw is involved, and I think he's been working with some powerful people who want me out of the picture." Gwynne frowned, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure, Elon? We're talking about Tom Renshaw. The guy left years ago. Why now? Why come after you now?" I don't know, Elon admitted, but something doesn't add up, and I'm afraid it's bigger than just him. It's about control. They want to control everything, SpaceX, Tesla, even my vision for the future. And if we don't stop them, they'll destroy everything we've built. JB leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. So what's the plan? Elon sighed, rubbing his temples. We need to go on the offensive. We need to expose whatever connections Renshaw has with Glenstone Partners and whoever else is pulling the strings behind the scenes. I've already asked Alex to dig deeper, but I need you two to help me strategize. We can't let this go public any further without exposing the truth. Gwyn nodded. We'll work on gathering more intel. I'll have our legal team put together a defense strategy, but we also need to think about the public perception. If this gets messy, we need to have a clear narrative ready to go. People are already starting to question you, Elon. I know, Musk replied grimly, but I won't go down without a fight. As the days turned into weeks, Elon's life became a series of meetings and strategy sessions. He spent countless hours poring over documents, digging for any shred of evidence that could tie Renshaw and his mysterious allies to the growing scandal. But as much as he tried to control the narrative, it felt like the walls were closing in even tighter. One evening, just after a particularly brutal media briefing, Elon sat alone in his office, staring out at the sprawling city below. His thoughts were clouded with doubt. Could he really fight this? Could he pull himself and his companies out of this mess? Or had he finally reached the end of the road? The sharp chime of his phone broke his reverie. It was a text from Alex. We've got something. Meet me tomorrow morning. Elon's heart skipped a beat. Finally a lead. The next morning he met Alex in a small, discreet conference room away from prying eyes. The air was thick with tension as Alex slid a folder across the table. Elon opened it, scanning the documents inside. What is this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex leaned in, his expression grave. It's worse than we thought. We've traced Renshaw's connections deeper. Glenstone Partners isn't just an investment firm. They're a front for something much bigger. I'm talking about organized power players who've been quietly manipulating the tech and energy sectors for years. They've been feeding information to your competitors, undermining your credibility, and driving up the pressure on Tesla and SpaceX. And it's all been coordinated. Renshaw's the linchpin. Elon felt his pulse quicken as he processed the information. So it's not just about me, it's about dismantling everything I've built. They're trying to ruin the future, my future, the future of SpaceX, Tesla, and everything else. Alex nodded grimly. Exactly. They want to take over the market, and they'll stop at nothing to do it. But there's one thing they didn't count on. You. Elon's gaze hardened. I'm not going to let them get away with this. We need to strike first. We expose Renshaw. And we expose Glenstone. We hit them where it hurts. But even as Elon formulated his next move, he knew that this was going to be the hardest battle of his life. There was no room for mistakes, no margin for error. The people behind this conspiracy were powerful, and they were not going to go down without a fight. The following days were filled with action. Musk's team worked tirelessly to gather evidence, compile data, and prepare the necessary legal steps to fight back. Elon wasn't just going to defend himself, he was going to take the fight to the heart of the conspiracy. But as he prepared for the war ahead, one question lingered in his mind. How far were they willing to go to destroy him? The answer, he suspected, was far farther than he was ready to go. The storm was about to break. Every moment felt like a countdown, and Elon's nerves were on edge. In the midst of the whirlwind, he found himself wondering if he'd ever be able to return to a life of simple innovations. The weight of the upcoming battle was heavy, but he had no choice but to press forward. His companies, his vision, and his future were all on the line. The information Alex had uncovered was more damning than Elon could have imagined. Glenstone Partners wasn't just a powerful investment firm. It was an intricate web of influence that stretched across the globe, controlling not only financial markets, but also the political and technological landscapes. Renshaw, Elon's former business partner, was merely the public face of a far-reaching operation that seemed to have no moral boundaries. As the team dug deeper, They discovered connections to some of the world's most powerful players, corporate executives, political figures, and even military contractors. Each new lead only seemed to confirm their worst fears. Renshaw had orchestrated this entire scheme to bring down not only Elon, but the entire tech industry that he had built. Renshaw didn't just want a piece of the pie, he wanted to take the whole damn thing. Elon muttered to himself one evening as he sifted through a pile of confidential documents, and he's got the people in place to make it happen. But there was no time for self-pity. The clock was ticking, and the battle was about to reach its climax. Elon knew the next step would be crucial. The public relations nightmare he had been managing was about to escalate into something far worse. If he didn't expose Renshaw and the full extent of the conspiracy, there was a real risk that his name would be irreparably tarnished. But the question loomed: what was the best way to expose them? They couldn't rely solely on court proceedings or leaks to the press. No, this had to be bigger. It had to shake the world. After a long night of discussions with Gwyn, JB, and the rest of his team, Elon decided it was time for a bold move. They would need to arrange a public reveal, a live broadcast, one that would take the world by surprise and show them the truth behind the scandal. It was risky, but if it worked, it could turn the tide in their favor. The plan was set into motion. Elon and his team began preparing for the live stream, gathering evidence and organizing interviews with whistleblowers who had inside knowledge of Glenstone Partners and their operations. Every detail had to be perfect. There was no room for error. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected message arrived. It was from Renshaw. "You don't know what you're getting into, Elon. If you continue down this path, you'll regret it. This isn't a game, it's much bigger than you or me." Elon stared at the message for a long time, considering his options. He had known from the beginning that the stakes were high, but now it was clear that Renshaw and his allies weren't going to back down without a fight. Still, Elon had come this far. There was no turning back now. If he let them win, everything he had worked for would be lost. He couldn't and wouldn't let that happen. The day of the live stream arrived. The tension in the air was palpable. Elon stood backstage, dressed. In a simple black shirt, his gaze focused as he waited for the signal to go live. His heart pounded in his chest, but he felt a calmness settle over him. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment he would take control of the narrative. 5 minutes to go, Gwyn said, walking up to him. "Are you ready?" Elon gave her a tight nod, but deep inside he felt the weight of the moment. The decision he was about to make could change everything. It was a risk, one that could either clear his name or destroy him completely. "Let's do it," Elon said, his voice steady. The live stream began with a powerful image. A darkened stage. The spotlight focused solely on Elon as he stepped into view. The audience, which spanned millions across the globe, was captivated. This wasn't just another corporate presentation or a tech pitch. This was something bigger. Elon began speaking, his voice calm yet unwavering. "Today, I stand before you, not just as the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, but as a man who has been forced to confront a truth far larger than any of us could have imagined." He paused, letting his words sink in. "What I'm about to share with you is the result of months of investigation and research. It's about corporate greed, political manipulation, and the lengths some people will go to in order to control the future. I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm fighting for all of us who believe in innovation, in progress, and in a future where humanity can reach the stars." As he spoke, a screen behind him flickered to life, displaying key documents and video clips, proof of Renshaw's ties to Glenstone Partners, the shady dealings, and the attempts to undermine his work. Elon continued, his voice rising with conviction. "These people want to control everything. They want to destroy the very foundations of progress that we've worked so hard to build. But I will not let that happen. I will not let them take away the future we've all worked so hard to create. The truth will come out, and when it does, we will be free to continue the work we started." He showed the final piece of evidence, an encrypted message directly linking Renshaw and several influential individuals to a conspiracy to destabilize not only Tesla and SpaceX, but also the entire tech industry. The moment the live stream ended, the world erupted. Social media exploded with reactions as people scrambled to process the shocking revelations. News outlets quickly picked up the story, with anchors discussing the implications of Elon's broadcast. The tide had turned. Public opinion was shifting in his favor, but even as victory seemed within his grasp, Elon knew the battle was far from over. This was just the beginning of what would be a long and brutal fight. Renshaw wouldn't give up that easily, and Elon was ready to face whatever came next. The war for the future had just begun, and there was no turning back now. But there was no time for self-pity. The clock was ticking, and the battle was about to reach its climax. Elon knew the next step would be crucial. The public relations nightmare he had been managing was about to escalate into something far worse. If he didn't expose Renshaw and the full extent of the conspiracy, there was a real risk that his name would be irreparably tarnished. But the question loomed: what was the best way to expose them? They couldn't rely solely on court proceedings or leaks to the press. No, this had to be bigger. It had to shake the world. After a long night of discussions with Gwyn, JB, and the rest of his team, Elon decided it was time for a bold move. They would need to arrange a public reveal, a live broadcast, one that would take the world by surprise and show them the truth behind the scandal. It was risky, but if it worked, it could turn the tide in their favor. The plan was set into motion. Elon and his team began preparing for the livestream, gathering evidence and organizing interviews with whistleblowers who had inside knowledge of Glenstone Partners and their operations. Every detail had to be perfect. There was no room for error. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected message arrived. It was from Renshaw. "You don't know what you're getting into, Elon. If you continue down this path, you'll regret it. This isn't a game, it's much bigger than you or me." Elon stared at the message for a long time, considering his options. He had known from the beginning that the stakes were high, but now it was clear that Renshaw and his allies weren't going to back down without a fight. Still, Elon had come this far. There was no turning back now. If he let them win, everything he had worked for would be lost. He couldn't and wouldn't let that happen. The day of the live stream arrived. The tension in the air was palpable. Elon stood backstage, dressed. In a simple black shirt, his gaze focused as he waited for the signal to go live. His heart pounded in his chest, but he felt a calmness settle over him. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment he would take control of the narrative. 5 minutes to go, Gwyn said, walking up to him. "Are you ready?" Elon gave her a tight nod, but deep inside, he felt the weight of the moment. The decision he was about to make could change everything. It was a risk, one that could either clear his name or destroy him completely. "Let's do it," Elon said, his voice steady. The live stream began with a powerful image. A darkened stage. The spotlight focused solely on Elon as he stepped into view. The audience, which spanned millions across the globe, was captivated. This wasn't just another corporate presentation or a tech pitch. This was something bigger. Elon began speaking, his voice calm, yet unwavering. "Today I stand before you, not just as the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, but as a man who has been forced to confront a truth far larger than any of us could have imagined." He paused, letting his words sink in. "What I'm about to share with you is the result of months of investigation and research. It's about corporate greed, political manipulation, and the lengths some people will go to in order to control the future. I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm fighting for all of us who believe in innovation, in progress, and in a future where humanity can reach the stars." As he spoke, a screen behind him flickered to life, displaying key documents and video clips, proof of Renshaw's ties to Glenstone Partners, the shady dealings and the attempts to undermine his work. Elon continued, his voice rising with conviction. "These people want to control everything. They want to destroy the very foundations of progress that we've worked so hard to build. But I will not let that happen. I will not let them take away the future we've all worked so hard to create. The truth will come out, and when it does, we will be free to continue the work we started." He showed the final piece of evidence, an encrypted message directly linking Renshaw and several influential individuals to a conspiracy to destabilize not only Tesla and SpaceX, but also the entire tech industry. The moment the live stream ended, the world erupted. Social media exploded with reactions as people scrambled to process the shocking revelations. News outlets quickly picked up the story, with anchors discussing the implications of Elon's broadcast. The tide had turned. Public opinion was shifting in his favor. But even as victory seemed within his grasp, Elon knew the battle was far from over. This was just the beginning of what would be a long and brutal fight. Renshaw wouldn't give up that easily, and Elon was ready to face whatever came next. The war for the future had just begun, and there was no turning back now. The aftermath of the livestream was both exhilarating and terrifying. For the first time in weeks, Elon felt a small but significant sense of hope. The truth had been exposed, and the world was beginning to see the lengths to which Renshaw and his powerful allies had gone to destroy him. The public's reaction was overwhelmingly supportive, and the media began to frame the story as a tale of corporate greed and manipulation. People were rallying behind Elon, but the real battle had just begun. As he sat in his office the next day, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on him. He had won a battle, but Renshaw wasn't the type to roll over easily. In fact, Elon knew that his former partner would only escalate the situation. Renshaw would never let this humiliation slide without a fight. True to Elon's instincts, the first signs of retaliation came swiftly. Late that night, his legal team received a cease and desist letter from Glenstone Partners. The letter accused Elon of defamation, claiming that his livestream had damaged their reputation and violated several confidentiality agreements. They demanded that he retract his statements and stop any further public disclosures, but Elon wasn't backing down. "We're not retracting anything," he told his legal team with determination. "This is only the beginning. We expose them for who they really are." His response was immediate and direct. Instead of backing down, Elon doubled down. He knew that this fight would not just be fought in courtrooms or in the press. It was a battle for the future, his company's future, and the future of the industries he had dedicated his life to transforming. As the days passed, the pressure on Elon grew. His inbox was flooded with legal notices, demands for private settlements, and threats from various corners. But his resolve remained unshaken. He had made it this far by being bold, by taking risks, and by refusing to allow his vision to be controlled by anyone. One morning he received an unexpected message, a cryptic email from an anonymous source. "They are coming for you, Elon. They have a plan in motion. You must act quickly. Meet me at the usual place. You know where." Elon's pulse quickened as he read the message. The usual place was a secluded diner on the outskirts of the city, a place he'd visited a few times over the years to meet with informants and people who had useful intel about the tech world's darker undercurrents. He couldn't ignore this lead. That afternoon, Elon arrived at the diner, his mind racing with possibilities. When he stepped inside, the bell above the door jingled, and a man in a dark jacket looked up from a corner booth. Elon recognized him immediately. It was Simon Black, a hacker and whistleblower who had once worked with some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley before turning on them. He was known for getting the information that others couldn't, and for being dangerously elusive. "Elon," Simon greeted him with a wry smile, motioning for him to sit. "I hope I'm not keeping you from anything important." "You've got my attention," Elon said, sitting down. "What do you know?" Simon glanced around the diner before speaking. "It's worse than you think. I've been digging into Glenstone Partners and the people behind them. Renshaw is just the beginning. They have a whole network of players in high places, politicians, CEOs, media moguls. They control the narrative, and they've got enough dirt on anyone who dares challenge them. They'll stop at nothing to silence you." Elon's jaw clenched. "How do you know all this?" "I've had my sources," Simon said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "This has everything you need: communications, financial transactions, and the identities of everyone involved. If you want to take them down, this is your leverage, but be careful, Elon. You're dealing with forces that are far more powerful than you realize. They won't just let you walk away from this." Elon took the flash drive and slid it into his pocket. "Thanks. I'll make sure this gets to the right people." Simon's eyes narrowed. "Just remember, once you unleash this, there's no going back." Back at Tesla's headquarters, Elon convened an emergency meeting with his legal and security teams. They reviewed the contents of the flash drive, which contained a staggering amount of evidence. Renshaw and his allies were not only involved in corporate espionage, but also had their hands in political corruption and large-scale financial manipulation. The network they had created spanned across industries and governments, and their influence was nearly untouchable. "This is it," Elon said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We have the smoking gun. If we release this to the public, we can end this once and for all. But we need to make sure it's foolproof. We can't afford to let them spin this." Gwynne Shotwell, ever the pragmatic leader, spoke up. "Elon, this is a huge step. We need to be strategic. If we just drop this all at once, it could cause chaos. We need to make sure the evidence is clear, undeniable, and doesn't give them an opening to retaliate." Elon nodded. "You're right, we have to control the message, but this time we do it our way. No more hiding. We go public with everything." The decision was made. The plan was set in motion. Elon's team worked around the clock to prepare a comprehensive public release. They meticulously organized the evidence, presented it in a clear and digestible format, and created a platform that would allow the public to engage with the material. This wasn't just a typical press conference or statement. Elon wanted to ensure that no one could deny the truth. As the days passed, the anticipation grew. The world was waiting for the next move, and Elon had no intention of letting them down. He had faced betrayal, manipulation, and overwhelming odds, but now he was ready to finish what he had started. The countdown was ticking. Renshaw and his allies were no doubt preparing for their own counterattack, but Elon knew one thing for certain: the truth was on his side, and with it, he would tear down the walls of secrecy and corruption that had kept the world in the dark for far too long. This time, there would be no retreat, no second chances. It was all or nothing. The morning of the release felt like the calm before the storm. Elon sat at his desk, staring at his screen as his team prepared the final details. The press release was scheduled to go live at noon, and the world was about to see the depths of the conspiracy that had threatened everything he had worked for. His hands hovered over the keyboard, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts, but he was resolute. He could feel the pressure building. It had been a long time coming. A part of him had always known that he would be up against powerful forces, but now there was no turning back. The truth was about to shake the foundations of the very industries that had once admired and feared him. He looked up as Gwynne Shotwell entered his office, her face grim. "Everything's in place," she said, her voice firm. But there was a noticeable tension in her eyes. "We're ready to go. Are you sure about this?" Elon nodded. "We've come too far to stop now. I'll go live on the stream in 20 minutes. Gwynne didn't say anything for a moment, just gave a quick nod. She understood the weight of the decision more than anyone. They had no idea how the public would react to this new wave of information, but they couldn't afford to hesitate. The stakes were too high. At exactly noon, the press release went live. A single tweet from Elon's account flashed on the screen. "Of every major news outlet, the truth cannot be hidden any longer. It's time for the world to see what Glenston Partners and their allies have been doing in the shadows. I have the evidence. Here it is." Within seconds, the website Elon's team had set up was inundated with traffic. The evidence presented, in clear and accessible formats, exposed not only the financial corruption that Renshaw had orchestrated, but also the sinister network of political figures, corporate executives, and media moguls who had been complicit in the schemes. The depth of the corruption was staggering. Millions of dollars funneled through backdoor deals, illegal lobbying efforts to influence legislation, and hush money paid to keep whistleblowers quiet. It didn't take long for the media to pick up on the story. News outlets began running special segments, detailing the explosive revelations and showing clips from the live stream. The backlash was immediate, but so was the overwhelming support. People took to social media in droves, using the hashtag that exposed the truth. It was trending worldwide, but Elon knew this was just the beginning. Renshaw wouldn't let this slide without retaliation, and the real battle was now about to begin. Back in the war room at Tesla's headquarters, Elon sat at a conference table with his team. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the inevitable response. From Glenstone partners and their backers. "Are we ready for the fallout?" Gwyn asked, her voice cutting through the tension. Elon leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the surface. "We've prepared for this, but we need to make sure we control the narrative. If they try to spin this into a smear campaign, we need to have counter-arguments ready. We're not just going to let them bury this." Just as he finished speaking, his phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from his lawyer, Andrew. "Glenstone just filed an injunction. They're trying to stop the release of the rest of the documents and have you held in contempt for defamation." Elon's eyes narrowed. "I knew they'd come after us. They won't go down without a fight." He stood up, pacing the room. "We have to stay ahead of them. We'll release the rest of the information now, not later. Let's make sure they can't hide the truth." In a bold move, Elon instructed his team to release an even more damning set of documents, financial statements, audio recordings, and internal emails that left no doubt about the illegal activities within Glenstone partners. The public's outrage only intensified, and the legal challenges piled up against Renshaw. But Glenstone was a well-oiled machine, and they had their own tactics. Within hours of Elon's release, their PR team went into full damage control mode. News outlets that had initially supported Elon's exposé were now flooded with counterclaims. A carefully orchestrated smear campaign began to unfold, painting Elon as a disgruntled ex-business partner trying to ruin a successful corporation. Renshaw's lawyers filed multiple lawsuits against Elon, accusing him of violating confidentiality agreements and damaging their reputation. The legal threats were relentless, but Elon stood firm. He wasn't just fighting for his reputation, he was fighting for truth and transparency. Meanwhile, the media landscape grew increasingly polarized. Some outlets praised Elon for his courage in exposing the truth, while others painted him as a villain who was simply lashing out. The public's opinion was divided. There were those who saw him as a hero, and those who believed he had crossed a line. Elon knew that the battle was far from over. Renshaw was powerful, and he had the resources to retaliate in ways that would make life difficult for Elon and his companies. But Elon also had something that Renshaw didn't: the truth. A few days later, as Elon was leaving the office for the night, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He answered without hesitation. "Elon," a familiar voice said. On the other end, it was Simon Black, the whistleblower hacker who had given him the flash drive. "Simon, what's going on?" "I've been hearing things," Simon said. "They're already planning something bigger. You need to be prepared. Renshaw has allies in high places, and they're going to pull every string they can to get you to back down." Elon's grip on his phone tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the legal battles are just the beginning," Simon continued. "There's more at play here, something bigger than you can imagine. You need to stay one step ahead, Elon. Trust no one." Elon's mind raced as the implications of Simon's warning hit him. The stakes had just gotten even higher. He wasn't just battling a powerful corporation. He was up against a network of people who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. And now, with everything on the line, Elon Musk was ready for the final showdown. The weeks following the release of the full set of documents had felt like a whirlwind. Elon's every move was scrutinized, dissected and criticized by the media. His legal team was working around the clock to combat the endless lawsuits and injunctions coming from Glenstone partners and their powerful allies. But through it all, Elon remained unwavering. He knew the stakes were too high to back down now. Renshaw and his team had underestimated the fury they had unleashed. What started as an attack on Elon Musk's reputation had morphed into a battle for truth and accountability on a global scale. And now, Elon found himself preparing for the most critical moment of his life. The phone call came late one night, just as Elon was reviewing some last-minute court documents with Gwyn. "Elon, it's Simon," came the voice on the other end. His tone was grave. "They've made their move. It's not just about the legal battle anymore." Elon's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" I've been tracking some of their communications, Simon continued. Renshaw and his allies have a plan to discredit you once and for all. They've been gathering dirt on your personal life, your companies, everything. They'll go after anything to break you. They're pulling out all the stops. Elon's grip tightened around the phone. What can we do? We need to go on the offensive, Simon said. This isn't just about defending yourself anymore. You need to strike first. Expose everything. Leave no stone unturned. Elon looked at Gwyn, who had been quietly listening to the conversation. She nodded, her expression serious. We knew this day was coming, but now we need to be prepared for the war they're bringing. The next morning, Elon called a meeting with his senior team at Tesla and SpaceX. There was no time for hesitation. Renshaw's network was already closing in, and Elon needed to act fast. We can't just sit here and let them tear us apart, Elon said, standing in front of a whiteboard filled with timelines, legal strategies, and key names of people in Glenstone's inner circle. We're fighting not just for our companies, but for every single person they've manipulated and exploited along the way. Gwyn spoke up. We've prepared a counter-offensive. We can't rely solely on the courts or the media anymore. We need to hit them where it hurts. Expose their lies, their corruption, and their dirty dealings. Every bit of evidence we have goes public. No more hiding. Elon nodded. It's time to make them regret ever crossing us. The days that followed were a blur of legal strategy, press conferences, and private meetings with allies who had also been wronged by Glenstone, partners. Elon's decision to go on the offensive had a ripple effect. Former employees of Glenstone, along with whistleblowers from various industries, reached out to share their stories. Slowly, a network of truth-tellers was forming, people who had been crushed by the system that Renshaw and his cronies had built. Meanwhile, the legal battle intensified. Glenstone's high-powered lawyers were relentless, pushing back at every turn. But Elon had something they didn't, an army of people who were finally ready to fight back against the corruption that had kept them silent for so long. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't just about Tesla or SpaceX. This was about something far bigger, a fight for the soul of the industries that had shaped the modern world. The day of the final court hearing arrived. The tension in the air was palpable. As Elon entered the courtroom, his heart raced. He wasn't just facing Renshaw today. He was up against a system that had long been rigged in favor of the powerful. The judge, a stern man with an air of authority, called the proceedings to order. As Elon's team presented their case, one piece of damning evidence after another came to light. There were financial documents, witness testimonies, and recorded conversations that exposed Renshaw's role in the corruption. Every lie, every manipulation was being laid bare for the world to see. But Renshaw wasn't going down without a fight. His legal team tried to spin the narrative, attempting to discredit the evidence and paint Elon as a bitter ex-partner out for revenge. They fought tooth and nail to salvage his reputation, but with each passing moment the truth became harder to ignore. Then came the moment that would change everything. Elon stood before the judge, ready to make his final statement. He felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but his voice was steady and calm. "Your Honor," he began, "I didn't come here to destroy Glenstone Partners. I came here because the people who have been hurt by their actions deserve justice. These are not just business dealings. These are lives that have been ruined by greed and corruption." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "I didn't do this to hurt anyone, but I won't stand by and let them continue to hurt others. The truth is bigger than any one of us, and it's time for it to come to light." The judge looked at Elon for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to the defense. "You've heard Mr. Musk's statement," the judge said, his voice cold. "This court will reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments. I suggest you prepare accordingly." Elon exhaled slowly. The end was in sight, but there was still one final hurdle to overcome. Tomorrow the truth would either set him free or condemn him forever. As he left the courtroom, Gwyn met him at the door, a small but knowing smile on her face. "You did it, Elon," she said quietly. "You've shown them who you really are." Elon didn't smile. "The war isn't over yet, but we're closer than we've ever been." Back at his office, Elon sat alone for a while, reflecting on everything that had led him here. The journey had been filled with twists and turns, victories and losses. But one thing was certain: he had fought for what was right, no matter the cost. And now, as the final chapter of this battle began to unfold, Elon Musk knew that he had already won. No matter what happened in the courtroom tomorrow, the truth had already begun to change the world. The reckoning had arrived, and Renshaw's empire would never be the same again. The night before the closing arguments, Elon couldn't sleep. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. What if the judge didn't see the truth the way he did? What if Renshaw's well-funded legal team could turn things around at the last minute? But more than anything, he thought about the people who had suffered because of Glenstone Partners, people whose voices had been silenced by the system for so long. As the clock ticked into the early hours of the morning, Elon finally rose from his desk and walked to the window of his office. He looked out over the sprawling city of Los Angeles, the glow of the skyline reminding him of all that was at stake. "This isn't just about me," he whispered to himself. "It's bigger than that." The following day, the courtroom was filled to capacity. Journalists packed the benches, eager to witness the final act of the dramatic saga. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. It was clear that the stakes had never been higher. Elon sat at the defense table, his usual calm demeanor in place, though inside his heart was pounding. He exchanged a glance with Gwyn, who sat beside him, her face a mask of focus and determination. Both of them knew that the next few hours would shape the future of not just Tesla, but everything they had worked for. Judge Roberts, the presiding officer, entered the courtroom, his stern expression betraying no emotion. He was a man who had seen it all and made his name by ruling decisively. This was the moment where all the pieces of the puzzle would fall into place. The closing arguments began. Renshaw's attorney, a silver-haired man named Samuel Finch, stood first. Finch was a seasoned litigator, known for his ruthless tactics and eloquent speeches. He paced back and forth in front of the jury, using every trick in the book to try to sway them. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Finch began, his voice smooth and persuasive. "Elon Musk may be a well-known figure, but he is no different from the rest of us. He has his faults and he has made mistakes. But we cannot allow him to use this courtroom as a platform to settle personal vendettas. Glenstone Partners has done nothing wrong. The evidence presented by Mr. Musk's team is nothing more than a series of half-truths and conjecture. We ask you to reject these baseless accusations and side with the truth." The jury looked attentive, but their expressions remained neutral. Elon felt his pulse quicken as Finch continued to paint him as a vindictive, reckless billionaire. This wasn't the first time he had been portrayed this way, but something about this moment felt different. This was the culmination of years of his life's work. Then, it was Elon's turn. He stood slowly, his gaze sweeping the courtroom. For a moment, everything went silent. He knew that this speech, this moment, would be the defining one of his entire career. "Your Honor," Elon began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "I am not here to vilify anyone. I am here to speak for the countless people whose lives have been shattered by the actions of Glenstone Partners. The evidence presented is not fiction, it's the truth. What we've shown over the course of this trial isn't just a collection of legal documents, but the reality of a system built on deception and manipulation." He paused, looking out at the jury, then at Renshaw, who was sitting in the front row, his face a mask of anger. "We are here because this company, this man has hurt people, real people, for far too long, and the people who tried to bring those wrongdoings to light were silenced, smeared and destroyed by a system designed to protect the powerful. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for justice." Elon let the weight of his words hang in the air. He knew the jury was listening, but more importantly, he knew the world was listening. This was his moment to show everyone what mattered to him. "Today," he continued, "we have the chance to make a difference, to stand up to those who think they can hide behind money, power, and influence, to send a message that the truth will always find its way to the surface." The room was dead silent as Elon finished. Even Renshaw, who had been so confident just days earlier, sat back in his chair, his face pale. Judge Roberts leaned forward. "We will now proceed with the jury's deliberations." The jury filed out, leaving an eerie silence in the room. Elon felt the weight of their decision bearing down on him. He turned to Gwyn, who gave him a small nod of reassurance. "You did the right thing, Elon." As the minutes turned into hours, Elon's mind raced. The gravity of the situation was impossible to ignore. Renshaw had already made enemies in high places, and if Elon won, it wouldn't just be a legal victory. It would be a victory for every person who had ever felt powerless in the face of corruption. But what if the jury didn't see it that way? What if they were swayed by Renshaw's charm or his well-funded defense team? The doubt lingered in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to burst. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the jury returned to the courtroom. Judge Roberts looked at the foreman. "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreman nodded solemnly. "We have, Your Honor." The room held its breath. "Elon Musk," the foreman said, "you are hereby awarded full restitution for damages and losses caused by the fraudulent actions of Glenstone Partners. The jury finds in favor of the plaintiff on all counts." Elon blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly, but the words rang in his ears, and slowly it began to sink in. They had won. The courtroom erupted into whispers, but Elon was frozen in place. The years of hard work, the sleepless nights, the fights against insurmountable odds, it had all led to this moment. Renshaw, for the first time, looked truly defeated. His empire, built on lies and manipulation, was crumbling before his eyes. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of reporters gathered, their cameras flashing as Elon stepped out, his legal team beside him. The media had been relentless, but today they had to report the truth. Elon smiled faintly as he addressed the cameras, but his thoughts were already on the next chapter. This victory wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much larger, a movement toward transparency, justice, and accountability. "The battle's not over," Elon said, "but today we made sure that the truth has a voice." And with that, Elon Musk's fight against corruption, deception, and greed had ended. But it was just the beginning of a new era for the industries that had shaped the modern world. The story of his victory would echo far beyond the courtroom, leaving a lasting impact on the fight for justice. And Elon Musk knew that his work had only just begun.